Okay, so this is just a reminder from the definition matching task you had earlier in the booklet. So it's just defining compliance, internalisation, identification, NSI and ISI. These things are all named on the spec. You need to know the definitions of them. You could be asked about it in the exam. So compliance is going along with the group without accepting their point of view. Internalisation, going along with the group because we accept their perceptions and beliefs are accurate. Identification is adopting an attitude or behaviour because we want to be associated with the group. NSI is conforming in order to gain approval or avoid disapproval. And ISI is conforming because we believe the majority to be correct. So we've looked at conformity in terms of types. So compliance, internalisation and identification, explanations for conformity, so NSI and ISI, and now we're looking at factors that influence conformity. So there are 3 factors named in the spec, so task difficulty, group size and unanimity. So you need to know about these factors and you need to know about relevant research, but it's ASH's research and the variations on ASH that looks at these, so that's the only bit of research that you need to mention. You don't need to worry about learning other studies. So the first variable is task difficulty. So the first thing that will affect the level of conformity is difficulty of the task. So what Ash did was that he changed the difficulty of the task and he changed the comparison line. So the lines on the right hand side were similar in size to the line on the left hand side. He found that it made people harder to judge the correct answer and therefore conformity increased. So why do you think this would be? So in terms of task difficulty, what is happening here is when the lines were similar, it becomes more unclear. People are uncertain as to what to do, and then they tend to conform due to ISI. So if task difficulty increases, conformity increases because it becomes an ISI task. The second variable is the effective group or the majority size. So what Ash did was he varied the amount of people that were in the groups, the amount of confederates in the group. So this is a graph that shows the results. So in terms of what this graph shows is that conformity will increase as group size increases up to a point. So it's up to around 4 or 5 is your optimal group size. And then it will decrease after that. So Ash is saying that there is an optimal group size in order to increase conformity. So as group size increases, conformity will increase to a point where it will plateau and then it will start to dip down. And the third variable is unanimity. So that's where you have complete agreement in the room. Now, Ash found that if unanimity broke, so if there was a confederate that gave the correct answer as opposed to the incorrect answer, conformity dropped from 33% to 5%. And that is because the other person gave social support to the participant and they felt like they could give the correct answer. This is a video of Ash's study on YouTube. And it shows what happens if there is a lack of unanimity. So what happens if the participant has some social support and how that will reduce conformity. So in your booklet, there's a box to summarize task difficulty, group size and unanimity. And what you need to say there is about how task difficulty, group size and unanimity can affect conformity. Underneath that in your booklet, there is a space for you to give specific examples of exactly what Ash did. So we can say that in terms of task difficulty, increasing task difficulty increases conformity because it becomes an ISI task, and that is a great answer. But sometimes you might be asked to give an example from research. So in the box underneath, you need to specifically state how Ash found this in his study. So for task difficulty, it's about Ash changing the size of the lines. For group size, it's about Ash changing the number of confederates. And for unanimity, it's about Ash providing a confederate that gives social support. So remember, in a question, you could be asked about it generally, or you could be asked about it specifically from Ash's research. So here's a STEM question here. Identify 3 factors that might influence conformity. State the likely influence of each factor on whether Gary will conform. So again, you've got task difficulty, unanimity, and the other one, which I've forgotten. Group size, obviously. Okay, so in terms of group size is 12. 12 is above the optimal number, so you could argue in terms of group size, you would have lower conformity. Task difficulty, it says it's not easy. So you could say it's a difficult task, therefore you're more likely to see conformity due to ISI. And then unanimity, there is not unanimity. Gary has some social support from his friend that will agree with him. So you could say that conformity is less likely because of that. So where you get your 6 marks is you'd state the 3 factors, the group size, task difficulty, unanimity. You'd give an example from the scenario. So the size of 12, the fact it's a difficult task, the fact that Gary has help. And then you would have to say whether that would increase or reduce conformity in this scenario. In terms of evaluating factors affecting conformity, it's all based on Ash's research. So you can use, apologies for the typo there, you could use Ash's research to evaluate, so the fact they're lab studies, the fact it's Western, the fact that it's male participants. On caboodling the interactive activities, there is an Ash numbers quiz. It's worth having a go if you can. And then on page 15, the top of page 15, if you use the sentence as a starter for evaluating factors affecting conformity, so gender or cultural bias, controlled lab setting, and the non-aesthetic nature of the study. And shortly, I will show you some exemplar answers for those notes. There is an essay plan for you to complete in your booklet. That should help make it a bit easier to revise from. And that's what we've been through just now. Okay, so the first evaluation point from the booklet, you could talk about ISI being a legitimate and reliable explanation for conformity because it can explain behavior, so it has face validity. With Lincoln, Hess and Perkins, you could talk about the fact it supports NSI as an explanation for conformity. And then McGee and Teven says that there might be limitations in explaining conformity behavior.